Brisbane has some of the worst traffic in Australia that turns morning commutes into soul-crushing bumper-to-bumper gridlock. And don't get me started on what happens when it's raining heavily and Damo spins out and his flogged-out Commodore with bald tyres.
Fucking hell!
This rage-inducing daily crawl becomes most painful the closer you get to the city, where roads begin to converge and create the worst traffic. And nowhere is this mind-numbing traffic convergence more apparent than along the roughly 3-kilometre stretch of Coronation Drive. Carrying roughly 75,000 vehicles per day, Coronation Drive is up there as one of Brisbane's most congested roads, with Moggill Road often being named worse. Go west side. But don't worry, Brisbane had a plan to combat this congestion. The roughly 3-kilometre stretch of gridlocked road wasn't going to be saved by the adjacent 4-track railway, nor by the overflowing bicentennial bikeway beside it, and not even by its dedicated bus lane. More on that later. Faced with all these options, they went for the most classic move in the Australian political playbook. Just one more lane, mate. Except this time it wasn't just any extra lane. It was a dynamic extra lane. This isn't just another video about how one more lane bro doesn't work. It's about how making that lane dynamic just turbocharges the stupidity. And even worse, I'll show you the rage-inducing absurdity behind how they tried to fix this completely gridlocked stretch of road, with help from none other than this guy. We'll come back to him. In the meantime, let me get you up to speed about my hometown Brisbane, the capital of the Sunshine State, Queensland. Brisbane, like many other cities, sprawl to hell and sundry, making people relying on cars to get around. It's a typical radially developed sprawling city of an English-speaking country, with a lot of employment being concentrated around the city centres, surrounded by residential. Naturally, this resulted in roads all converging the closer you get to the city, that just multiplies the traffic. And in this case, Coronation Drive. Historically part of Moggill Road that runs from Brisbane to, you guessed it, Moggill, this section from Toowong to the city was renamed River Road in the 1870s, then to Coronation Drive in 1937 by the Governor of Queensland, Sir Leslie Wilson, to honour the coronation of King George VI. As the western suburbs grew, this cute little riverside road got the same treatment every Brisbane road seems to get when traffic goes up. It got widened. Never mind the perfectly good 4-track railway line next to it, the now overcrowded bikeway, the countless buses using the corridor, or even the ferry right on the Brisbane River right next to it that takes you straight into the city. Rubbish all those ideas. Let's widen Coronation Drive so we can cram more cars through onto the, Riverside Expressway. This will be another video topic later on. But by the late 90s, Coronation Drive was basically widened out to its maximum potential of predominantly 5 lanes, but 6 lanes in some sections to allow for turning lanes. But any further major widenings would require extremely costly land resumptions of the adjacent apartments and offices, or building out onto the river, which both are very costly. But Brisbane, being a radially developed city, meant that there were distinct directional peak flows in traffic. As observed in many other cities around the world, in morning peak hour, roads toward the city are full, but outbound lanes are practically empty, and in the afternoon, vice versa. So maybe they can leverage this extra underutilized road capacity instead of, improving the underfunded public and active transport network. So in the 90s, the mayor, Jim Sawley at the time, set about implementing a tidal flow traffic system. In the morning, the middle of the 5 lanes would be set to the inbound direction, and the direction would be reversed for the afternoon drive home. He primarily implemented this system to utilize the supposed underutilized lanes, but also to make the implemented bus lane politically palatable. Presumably because implementing a bus lane triggered all the car brains into thinking they were losing their God-given right to a road, as they always do. Here's a bit of foreshadowing for you. The lane's directions were managed by overhead gantries with X's and O's indicating if the lane was open or closed, as well as ground-based boom gates blocking paths on the ground. The system seemed so simple. An extra lane added to both directions to minimal cost and construction. What could go wrong? Well, it did go wrong, because if normal road widenings aren't already stupid enough, making them dynamic just adds fuel to the fire of stupidity. But before I tell you how silly it went, push my algo by commenting the worst solution to traffic your city tried. So how did this variable tidal flow lane changing system play out? Well, it went exactly as expected, but much worse. Traffic-wise, there was 3/5 of fuck all change. The academic world seems to be still on the fence about tidal flow systems' effectiveness, but there is tons of academic research already showing that whilst widening lanes does improve traffic flow, this is a temporary win, as more people are encouraged to drive, thus nullifying the great investment after about 5 years, when congestion speeds lower to pre-widening levels. But Coronation Drive wasn't even able to get 5 years of benefits before it returned to normal traffic, because a huge idiotic thing about road widening in cities is that it doesn't matter how wide you make the road. What matters is the inflow and outflow capacity of that road. Well, I have no doubt that some of you have been stuck in traffic, then eventually come to a widened section of road, at which point you're able to change into the open lanes and accelerate, giving you the feeling of the open road and reduced traffic, only to come back to the narrowed section of old road that hasn't been widened, where you then subsequently encounter congestion again due to traffic re-merging. And here's the crux of the matter. It doesn't matter how wide you make the road if the inflow and outflow of the road section doesn't really change. You can't attach a 1 meter diameter pipe to your garden tap and expect to have a right control hose blasting people away. In the case of Coronation Drive, driving west in the direction of Toowong, most people try to turn right at the T intersection to go west along Mogul Road, but unfortunately it only has 2 lanes to turn right. In the case of the inbound, sections of the road were wide enough for 6 lanes, so during morning peak hour there were 4 lanes dedicated for inbound, but it had to be reduced by the time it got to the ICB intersection. It's really just a huge fruitless exercise to dynamically widen the road, only to narrow it again. I don't think I need to go over the well-known issue of how endless road widening induces more demand. You're likely already familiar with it. But in case not, increasing road capacity encourages more people to drive, and eventually the additional traffic fills the new space, bringing congestion right back to where it started. Now, if one more lane bro wasn't already stupid enough, they managed to turbocharge the idiocy by making it dynamic. In theory, it makes sense. Repurpose the underutilized opposing traffic lanes for the dominant flow. Now that's in theory. In practice, it was an absolute shit show. Compared with simple paint and concrete barriers, electronic signboards and boom gates were just more failure points that could risk crashes and confusion. Now the dynamically changing lanes was just outright confusing. And there is anecdotal evidence that the system was also unsafe as people somehow crashed through the barricades that necessitated costly repairs. But the worst thing about the system is that it was faulty. With all the electronic gantry signs and swinging boom gates that people could crash into, the system was frequently out of order and revert to default failsafe mode, essentially blocking off the switchable lanes as a precaution, which in turn reduced the whole road by 1 lane that council claimed reduced the road throughput by 43%. These failsafe modes would be triggered on average about 3 times a month. Council stated that the system cost $600,000 per year to maintain and needed a further $7 million in repairs by the time the system was shut down in 2008. Now, the writing was clearly on the wall for this dysfunctional, costly, and ineffective tidal flow traffic system. And in 2008, the then Lord Mayor Campbell Newman made the right decision to scrap the system and just implement a permanent 3 inbound lane and 2 outbound lane road design, saving the city millions in unnecessary maintenance costs and unnecessary traffic. Oh, you thought this guy was the hero of the story? Yeah, think again. Because the stupidity of Coronation Drive wasn't done yet. When Newman was elected in 2004, he downgraded the bus lane on Coronation Drive to a T3 lane. A T3 lane is where only vehicles with occupants of 3 or more were allowed to drive. But then again, in 2007, a year before Screwman removed the tidal flow system, he also removed the T3 lane, completely against the advice of council officers, citing that of all the vehicles using Coronation Drive, only 5% of them used the T3 lane. But if that wasn't rage-inducing enough, they found that of those 5% of vehicles who used the T3 lane, it carried 32% of all the people who traveled on that road. 32%. That makes it 6.4 times more efficient than the other 2 lanes combined. It's unbelievable. How much more economically efficient do you want to be, Mr. Liberal man? For those who don't know, the Liberals in Australia are honestly the biggest fucking sellouts to their own supposed political stance than any other political party in Australia. For my non-Australian audience, the Liberals in Australia means economic liberals. So apparently they are staunch free market capitalists, but somehow they are also hell-bent on being against property owners developing their land to meet housing demand by banning townhouse developments, and against a mode of transport that's so efficient, it transports 1/3 of the people along a road for the fraction of a cost of a dynamic road widening bullshit. But hey, what do you expect from a guy who planted the idea for Brisbane's Timu Metro, derailed, pun intended, the critical Cross-River Rail project with his stupid bus and train tunnel idea, and also sold valuable prime land to private developers to build a casino that was a whisker away from folding before it even opened? It's even more rage-inducing when the council said that all traffic flowed faster without the T3 lanes, but then they admit the buses were slower. Can we all see where this was going? The extra free lane space makes the road temporarily faster, but the bus is slower as it now has traffic in the lane. So of course, more and more people drove, because why sit in a bus that's stuck in the same traffic as you, in a car stuck in the same traffic? And eventually it clogged up the former bus lane, leaving us with the current day situation of traffic across all lanes and buses crawling with no end in sight to this madness.
Christ's sake, I need a beer.
But old Campbell did promise at least a T2 lane once the Hale Street link, now known as the Go-Between Bridge, was to be completed in 2010. And when it was completed, he didn't follow through with that. Coronation Drive traffic isn't a problem of how wide Coronation Drive is or how efficient the lights are. It's a road indicative of Brisbane's decades-long piss-poor attitude to transport planning. Coronation Drive traffic is just a symptom of a more complicated problem in the city's urban planning, and trying to treat the symptoms leaves the problem to fester. And that's what Coronation Drive needs. More effective public transport like bus lanes, better train frequencies, wider bikeways and less roads, parking and endless road upgrades. There are so many things to do that can not solve traffic, but instead move people, instead of leaving it up to a dynamic one more lane bro system. In the end, their only solution was just to build another tunnel. I'm going to leave it at that. If you like this content, check out my other stuff on Brisbane and Swiss transport planning.